Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening and welcome to Online Adda at Maja House. And today I'm delighted to introduce you to Kanika Dhillon, author and screenplay writer, and she's an Amritsar girl. Kanika is India Today's Woman Writer of the Year 2018. She started her career with Ra One as an intern at Red Chilies, working with Shah Rukh Khan. From there to her films like Man Marziyan, Kedarnath, Judgmental Hai Kya, Kanika has always charted her own path. She is an alumni of St. Stephen's College, Delhi, St. Xavier's, Mumbai, and then LSE. She's written 3 novels as well. Bombay Duck is a Fish, which is a satire on the Indian film industry. The young adult superhero novel called Shiva and the Rise of the Shadows. And she's written a drama called The Dance of Durga. There's also a film on Netflix called Guilty. To talk to her today, there are 2 of us. There's Gurpratap Khera and myself. Gurpratap, of course, as you know, teaches English literature at Hindu College in Amritsar. He's a poet and he's a big RD fan and a Gulzar fan. And there's lots of interesting stuff that we've got in the kitty today. So let's begin right away. Gurpratap, would you like to ask the first question then?
Sure. Hi, Kanika.
Hi, Good Pratap.
And thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
ये आपको पता नहीं स्क्रीन पे नजर आ रहे कि नहीं आ रहे, but I'm pretty sure कि आपके काफी सारे टीचर्स यहाँ पे होंगे. Mrs. Nayyar, जसप्रीत नैयर को आप जानते हो.
हाँ, of course. But I've not seen her yet. But hi, ma'am. How are you?
उनका ऑडियो अभी ऑफ है, so she won't be able to say anything.
Okay.
My mother is also in the background, so.
Oh, great.
हाँ, अमृतसर के लोग भी बैठे हैं यहाँ पे.
अरे वाह, it'll be so nice to see them.
Yeah. तो कनिका एक पहला सवाल जो है वो तो सिर्फ ये स्टैंडर्ड क्वेश्चन. Sure you must have heard and answered this question many times. कि आपकी ग्रेजुएशन हुई from London School of Economics, and once you came back from London, instead of going into the commercial field, you decided to go into the film industry. That happened.
That didn't happen after I finished my graduation. That I wanted this thing to happen since I was in Amritsar.
Okay.
So even before I went to Stephens to do my college degree, I'd had a chat with my parents that I want to write and I want to write films and I want to be an author. And usually this sort of work is considered very risky and you don't really see it as a very solid professional career option. So it was a very simple arrangement that, I get all my degrees in place. I have like a backup option, a solid backup option with good degrees. And once I've finished my master's, then I was, as was told to me and promised to me that, then I'm free to do what I want. So I went off and finished my master's. And then I came right back to Mumbai, and they were obviously hoping that I would have forgotten and these wayward dreams would kind of disappear, but unfortunately they didn't. So, and I landed in Mumbai, and I said that I definitely want to give this a shot. And like you said, my plan B is pretty solid. I have an LSE, I have a St. Stephen's, and I want to actually tell everyone here that the best thing that actually happened to me was to get that background of education that I did, the solid education that I did, even though it was a trade-off with my parents. But I'm so glad in retrospect that, I took that time, I studied, I traveled, I kind of built a very solid base to come back to and then take a risk of trying to make it as an author, as a writer, as a filmmaker in this film industry.
Okay. So there was no opposition, there were no one was against you coming to the industry, right?
Well, opposition as in, there are various degrees of opposition. One is a very vocal opposition, and one is a very subtle passive opposition. So obviously when my parents were very educated and very careful as to not want to seem to be kind of trying to clip my wings, and I'm very grateful for that, because I truly believe that when kids grow up and then they want to kind of try out new different things, the attitude of the parents has a lot to do with how far they would want to go or what kind of risks they would like to take. So my parents, I think, were very careful in not trying to, douse my dreams or, say that, it's all like in your head. So they gave me they took a middle path where they said, let's see what happens. You do this and then we'll see what happens. So which I thought that was a very smart way to go about it. So the opposition was just this, that the opposition actually is, the struggle really starts when you actually get into the field, and then you have a ticker, the time running, that you have that much time to either do something with this opportunity that you have, or are you going to fail in it? That's where the pressure and the real struggle starts. Before that, I really didn't, have a very strict kind of a mandate that no, I can't enter Bollywood. It was very passive aggressive.
Thank you. Over to you, Preeti.
Yeah, so leading from that really, because as a mother, I've gone through the same thing when my daughter wanted to go off to Pune and then to Bombay and finally joined the TV industry. So yeah, we went through a lot of that angst anyway. But do you think that the kind of education then that you've had and the exposure that you've had, is that one of the reasons why you write the kind of films and the kind of characters that you do? Because they're extremely out of the box, especially all these women, very, very out there, very gritty, very sort of rough edged, very different.
Well, I'd say absolutely. I mean, writers, whatever they write is a reflection of a lot of their own experiences, life experiences of their loved ones, people around, or empathizing with things that they observe. Education is a very integral part of the formative years that I have kind of spent either, taking an education through formal channels or the life experiences that I've had. So yes, everything that I have, be it my studies or be it the travels or be it the friendships, everything that I have lived so far is in a way responsible for the voice that I have today. So, and I think that's true for everyone. And some people ask me, what is it that you need to be a writer? And I always tell them, you need to go out there and live experiences, open your mind, and actually just like live life. So I strongly believe that some of all my experiences, which obviously a major part of it includes the education, formative years of my life, have shaped the kind of voice I have today.
Yeah, because to write imperfection in a way, or to write characters who are not exactly the kind of, lovable or whatever, the usual people that, this is your Hindi filmy hero or heroine, but you're sort of making them much more edgy and much more out there. Maybe those are the characters that people also today identify with to a large extent, because obviously we've broken out of a lot of the old traditional ways of viewing that used to exist in the earlier times. So what do you think about that? Because say with all the three films that you've done, I mean, the ones that we know about, and the three films with their three heroines, would you like to talk about that a little?
Yeah, sure. I think that, all my films, like my body of work, starting from Man Marziyan, then going on to Kedarnath, Judgmental Hai Kya, and now most recently Guilty. My characters are not run of the mill. The women have a very strong point of view. They have a very strong voice. They are not an appendage to the hero. I just feel that it was just about time, and I also feel fortunate that I came at a time where a certain section of the audience was ready for this kind of a change, or this kind of a voice. Of course, there was a lot of opposition, like as you may know, if you've done some background Google search, that all my films run into trouble over moral issues or the stands that my characters take, and suddenly we have debates and discussions around it. Be it in Man Marziyan, Rumi's character, which was played by Taapsee, that the objection was that it was morally, questioning the whole idea of what a marriage should be like, and more specifically, how can a woman think of a lover when she's in a gurdwara? So on and so forth. There were questions raised about that. Then in Kedarnath, I was responsible for, being irresponsible with the whole idea of love jihad suddenly in this country. And, your Hindu guy is playing a Muslim and a Muslim girl is playing a Hindu and whatnot. And then you go on to Judgmental Hai Kya? And of course, the whole idea of how can you talk about mental health in a frivolous manner, which we never did. And they wanted to ban the film before they've even seen it. So I guess then again, Guilty spoke about a very, very important aspect of rape, which was where the onus was not just on, the guy, but also the women who perpetuate the patriarchy, and sometimes the women who cover up the men who are responsible for rape. So yes, I do tend to have a sense of the kind of topics I choose and the kind of characters that I have. They tend to make a large section of the population uncomfortable because they, at some level, they do question the status quo. At some level, they are a little against the norm. But who said that norm is the correct thing? It's just that the majority of people are conditioned to believe a certain thing, and that may not necessarily be right. How these characters have come about is just that I try to be as honest, and I try to protect my freedom as a creative voice when I write, because I don't want to kind of be aware of this will be liked by the audience, or this will be not liked by the audience, or this will make somebody uncomfortable, or this will make them not comfortable. So I try to protect myself from all those boxes, and I try to write as truthfully as I can, and then the creative process takes over, and I have these characters that I have and the stories that I have. And yes, in Bollywood, I do, over a period of time, with the kind of work, the body of work that I have, I am given this credit of bringing a very definitive female character to the silver screen, and I'm actually very proud of it, because I think it's about time. And the kind of women that I have known in my life, they've never been submissive and they've never been passive, and they are very much out there, and that's how I see my stories, and hence all my heroines are like that.
I was going to just ask you that does it make you uncomfortable with the kind of controversy or the kind of issues that get raked up? So instead of actually talking about the film, they actually push something else to the forefront. And does that make you angry? Does it make you uncomfortable?
Actually, I've become very comfortable with it now. It's I think I've just I've gotten used to it. In fact, I remember I was sitting in that censor board meeting for my Judgmental Hai Kya censor certificate, and one of the gentlemen who's a regular on the censor board meeting, he said, "Oh, you're used to controversy. Oh, no wonder." We were having a debate about why this is not correct and why this should not be censored, etc. So, well, actually, no, I don't have a problem, because I see it as a positive thing. I see it as a victory, in fact, that my heroines and my characters and my stories are not just there as something that you've seen and you've forgotten. You are carrying the discomfort, or you're carrying the questions, or you're carrying the experience with you, and you're taking it into your drawing rooms. You're discussing, you're talking about the nature of love, be it Manmarziyan, the whole idea of marriage in this Tinder generation, or be it mental health issues, say in Judgmental Hai Kya. So I'm very glad that my stories are coming out of they're not just there to kind of entertain you, but they're also there that you can talk about them, that you can debate, you can love them, you can hate them, but there's something that you're engaging with this particular topic, and it is opening a certain aspect of your mind. And ultimately, that therein lies the power of a good story, that you are seeing a dimension that perhaps you've not seen before. You are questioning it, maybe you're not liking it, but you're like seeing a different point of view. You could resist it or you could not, but for me, that is a very integral part of everything that I write, that it has to have some sort of a takeaway, good, bad, or ugly. If it leaves you unmoved, if there is no furor, if there's no love, if there's no emotional engagement that you've had with the kind of work I do, then I'm disappointed. So to answer your question, I like any kind of engagement with my work and my characters. It just makes me, it just confirms that it is a living thing, that it has affected people.
Yeah, so Guru and I were discussing this a little bit earlier also about I think you said somewhere that, of course, this judgmental hai kya because of its, the mental health issue and the very delicate, sensitive way in which one has to deal with a subject like that. And that I think you said in many places that each one of you was responsible in the way that you approached the subject. And Gurpratap and I were talking about basically mental health. And today, because it is COVID times, and because we've recently had this horrible thing that happened with Sushant Singh in Bombay, all of this has suddenly come to the forefront all over again. I mean, it's always been there, not that it's ever away from you, but in times like this when everything else seems so bleak, and then there is this thing staring you in the face. And Gurpratap, would you like to ask that question? Because this is what we were talking about earlier when
Yeah. मैं इसी के ऊपर ही बात करने वाला था कि अब controversies की बात हो रही है तो कनिका, when you came to the industry and joined Red Chillies, so you were the outsider. Did you feel welcomed or accepted, or were you considered an outsider, or was it just the workplace for you?
See, I will. This kind of a question about outsider versus insider and nepotism. It's not a simple answer because it's not a simple situation. But to give a bird's eye view of this entire thing, the thing is that there are a lot of star kids or people from within the industry, filmmakers who are sons and daughters and relatives of very famous established filmmakers, who have not made it in the industry, despite all the perks that they've had, despite all the advantages that they've had, they have not been able to succeed. On the other side, you have outsiders who have been ruling the industry. There's a section of outsiders, say Shah Rukh Khan. They have come in and they have made a success of what they've achieved what they wanted to achieve. So I feel actually, rather than labeling it as an insider and outsider conversation, what one needs to focus on is that the nature of this industry is that it's a tough place. The outsiders have their own set of struggles. The insiders have their own set of struggles. Yes, star kids or people from the film backgrounds or who have connections, who have aunts and uncles, everyone who's in, they do have a head start. You can't deny that. They do have a head start. They get platforms more easily. They get more chances than the rest of us. But the good news is that does not define how successful you will be. Eventually, sheer talent and sheer hard work is what's going to get you there. So for me, that's what I tell myself when I see this entire thing. And I tell myself that, your starting line is maybe destiny. You may have to start 10 steps behind. But how far I go, how fast I run, and how much effort I put in is up to me. So you have to keep a positive frame of mind and you have to see the silver lining. And yes, I would say that Bollywood to a certain extent is an equalizer when it comes to talent. It will give you your due if you, of course, put in the kind of hard work and talent. But I also acknowledge and I also feel the pinch of the uneven starting points that people have, because and I think not only Bollywood, that's true perhaps even in other industries, but the glare is so much more in Bollywood because we are living in a fishbowl literally here. Everything that you do, your success is very public and your failure is very public. So we are actually very vulnerable when we are in this industry. So everything is very emotional and public. Hence, it gets spoken about a lot more than other industries, where perhaps, when you have a company, the son of your managing director automatically gets to start at a level whereas you have to start as an intern. It's everywhere. Starting points in life, unfortunately, are unfair. What we can do is we can be kind to each other, especially in an industry which can be very harsh because the failure and the success can be very personal and very harsh and very public. So that is my take on insider, outsider, and nepotist debate. And that's how I deal with it.
Thank you. Preeti?
I remember, I think you tweeted just a day or so back about Sushant Singh and said that, that like when you were shooting for Kedarnath and basically that you like being at the sets a lot. I've learned that as well. and that when you saw him there, he was carrying the story, but he had lots and lots of little bits and pieces that he had added himself, and there were notes to him, or there were ways in which he was going to add to the script, because he had done so much hard work, and that he's extremely focused. Would you tell us a little bit more about him? Because I think all of us have, in a manner, taken this grief to heart. It has
Oh
happened
yes.
when we
Oh
have all
yes.
been struggling with this feeling of, feeling really
A
low.
loss. Yeah, absolutely. His loss, his demise is feeling very personal because, he literally seems like one of us. He seems like our own child who has gone out there in the big bad world, and he did make a success story out of him. He was an inspiration to so many of us. And when something like this, which is so unfortunate and tragic, happens, it kind of completely affects you personally at a guttural level. But remembering Sushant, the actor, and the kind of artist he was, I remember, when I started writing Kedarnath. Usually, I don't have an actor in mind when I write my characters. But when Gattu, the director of the film, and myself, when we were discussing the initial idea, there was only one name. There was only one guy who both of us thought would be able to do this. And that, I feel, is amazing, because when an actor inspires creators, writers and filmmakers to actually write for them, that really shows the depth of talent that you have, and the kind of talent that you have. And Sushant had so much of raw talent and unpredictability, and he could so many layers he could bring to the screen. So I was most excited about writing Mansoor for Sushant, and perhaps it's the only character that I've actually written with Sushant in my mind. And when I finally met him after completing the script for the reading and all, it was such a fulfilling moment. I still remember my first reading of the film, and Sushant was teary-eyed, and he was completely into it, and he's like, I would love to play this role. And from there on, the journey started. And what I did not realize, what I was not expecting, of course I knew that he was superbly talented and I'd seen so much of his work. What I was not expecting was the immense amount of hard work and focus that guy had, that he would be reading a scene over and over again, and he would be making notes constantly, so much so that he'd converted his room into something that resembled the kind of room that Mansoor would live in. I was completely shocked. I'd never seen something like this. And I was so glad that, a guy with such level of commitment was playing a character that I had written. So I have immense respect for what Sushant stood for and his work ethic. And he did have a long way to go. And I'm completely heartbroken that the journey ended like this.
Yeah, I think, I think that's what a lot of people have felt. And especially, people like us who are not in any way, we have nothing to do with the industry. You just go and watch the films and you just rate the actors because of what they give you on the screen, and you don't really know them as people. But afterwards, seeing the home, seeing the books, seeing him curled up in a corner reading, seeing his, love for physics, his, the looking out at the stars, astronomy, all of that, makes the person a real person to you, which we normally don't ever get.
He was really multidimensional. He was a very intelligent, very, very, he could hold a conversation about any and every topic. Very intelligent person and very sharp, very warm. So yes, there was so much to Sushant that one could like and fall in love with and admire. So it is heartbreaking.
The other thing I wanted to talk about in Kedarnath, this whole angle of the Hindu-Muslim, because again, that is something which cuts to the bone right now. It is something that crops up every single day, whether it's in the newspaper, whether it's in the kind of stuff that we are seeing around us, even at a time of coronavirus. This is not something that is forgotten. This divide that has come. that maybe was there, but which is now staring us in the face so much more boldly, because it's really dividing our hearts. How did you think, or why did you want to bring in this angle of the Hindu-Muslim in this film?
See, Hindu-Muslim, this entire debate is perhaps unfortunately in our DNA now, because we are born in a political system where religious identities unfortunately are at the forefront, be it while we are voting, be it sometimes in certain places, your religious identity can determine if you live or die. Very unfortunate in this day and age, we're still standing at the same place. Now, when Kedarnath's idea came about, there were two aspects that one could focus on. One was the destruction of this disaster, which no one could make sense of, and the other was the humanity that rose to meet this disaster, and the humanity that we saw, where people kind of reached out to each other, saved each other. So I chose to focus on the latter, and you will find the mirroring of this kind of an emotion even in COVID times, and I will explain how in Kedarnath, whatever your religion be, ultimately when there was a disaster, your religion never came to save you. Humanity saved you. It was people who saved each other. It was not a Hindu guy or a Muslim guy who saved one another. And even in COVID times, when you have these bodies that are not, unfortunately the families are not able to claim them for whatever reasons, you are seeing Hindus giving burial. Hindus helping the Muslim bodies and burying them, and the Muslims coming and burning the Hindu bodies. Now again, it is not, I don't want to see it in this whole Hindu Muslim color. Ultimately it's they're being humane. So I really feel that when faced with a disaster, when you're facing life and death, you literally drop all your colors. There is no orange and there is no green. It is just ultimately there's life and there's death. And that's how basic it is. So the core of Kedarnath simply was that. And in any disaster, man-made or natural, this is something that will come to fore, that at the level of it's a very political game that we play with religion. And it is the first thing that gets suspended when you are facing death. So I don't know why we spend our entire life firstly identifying with it, and secondly making it a life and death issue when it's not. So that is why I wanted to kind of bring this Hindu-Muslim identity, bring it out against a natural disaster, and then kind of deconstruct it. So I don't know, maybe I've said it in a very technical term, but the whole idea is, I think I should sum it up in a normal language, is this only, that literally religion doesn't come to save anyone, humanity does. So that was the thought behind it.
Yeah, Gurpratap, do you have a question? Otherwise, I'm going to ask her about her foundation, but we can come to that later also. The NGO that she's, because you're talking about, humanity and all of that. Gurpratap, do you have something else in between?
He's muted, I think.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Hear you.
Yeah, I do have a question actually. Talking about how to put something across to the audience. I was watching Marziya the other day, and in the very beginning of the movie, there is that dialogue by the mother, ki chaped na khali merto. So that's a very typical Punjabi everyday kind of thing that Punjabi parents say to their kids. So how did you pick up those things?
अरे मैं भी तो पंजाब से आई हूँ, कहाँ से आई हूँ? My mother's also told me 25,000 times. I mean, where did I get it? Means that from everywhere. Like I've lived in Amritsar all my life, and you can take me out of Amritsar, you can't take Amritsar out of me. So you will find very Punjabi references, be it cultural, be it in different pockets. You will find them, you'll spot them everywhere.
No, that's okay. You are from Amritsar or the typical Punjabi dialogue, but then when you write for different characters, for example, in Kedarnath, you wrote for a Muslim girl. So make up for that thing. Unka dialogue kaise pakadna hai theek tarah se?
You're saying the dialect? The dialect? the dialect of that particular character, the language of a particular character. So yeah, so basically I, if you were to see the stories that I write, my films, they are, Man Marziyan was based in Punjab, Kedarnath is up near the hills, and now you have Guilty, which is in Delhi. So, I like languages, like I like to kind of study languages. I pick them up fast, and so when I write characters, I kind of get into the details of I do my research well, and that's how I'm able to kind of figure out how a character will speak. The emotion obviously is universal, depend on what the character is going through, but the dialect is something that you have to literally work on. It's like an equation, it's like a formula that you have to kind of work at. It is not instinctive that will come to me, because it's impossible for me to know all dialects. It's impossible for me to know exactly how they'll speak in Uttarakhand and temple towns, and they have, and even in temple towns, Kedarnath will have a different, people who live in Kedarnath will have a different twang, and if you go a little further down, they'll have a different, so it keeps changing by the kilometer. So one needs to do thorough research in that, and then at the same time, when we should know what it is, and then we need to cut it down also, because if we make it too steeped in that particular place, then the audience is not going to understand it. In fact, Man Marziyan, I got a lot of flack. Man Marziyan, the problem, they told me, like, I remember we had a screening of Man Marziyan, and Anurag Kashyap's mother was sitting there. She's from I think Delhi, or if I'm not mistaken, UP, somewhere in UP or Delhi. So she saw the film and she said, "You made a Punjabi film," to Anurag. So what is this? This is Punjabi film. So now, and a lot of people, not only her, not at the screening, but otherwise also, people felt that some of the distributors who saw the film, they said, "This is so much Punjabi." So it's not enough just to know the dialect and then make it very real. Then you need to know it, and then you need to cut it back also and put it in, make it pan India. So that's another kind of leveling that you need to do.
Thank you. So Preeti?
Yeah, I remember reading in one of your interviews, actually 3-4 of them, I guess, about feeling victimized and feeling harassed when you, because of being a woman, and words like easy on the eye, and men refuse to acknowledge that a woman is doing well in her life because of her talent rather than just good looks. So all this stuff, do you think things have changed after this Me Too thing that had happened, and so there was so much of calling out at that time in different industries, including, of course, Bollywood? Has anything changed?
See, first part of your comment about feeling victimized, and see, it's not really victimized, but I want to definitely say this, that as women in this country, we definitely are second-class citizens everywhere. We are far, be it in the parliament of this country, be it the in the multinational companies, is a glass ceiling, be it government sectors, be it Bollywood. We are not given our due. We don't have representation, and in certain areas of Haryana and Rajasthan, we are not even allowed to live. So that is the ground reality. Now, the women who are out there in the professional fields have somehow negotiated and understood how to make their way around, and I think they are way smarter than men, because they have to anyway take into account this disparity that is there emotionally, physically, psychologically, and the way the society is set up, and the judgments that come with it. So that is a given, all of that. Now, Bollywood is no different. So when I made that statement, I wanted to focus more on how to deal with it, rather than there's no time to feel victimized. If I was sitting there feeling victimized, I would not have done half the things that I want to do. So there is no time. Women should not have the time to feel victimized. There's no time. We already know the narrative. Now, how are we going to, let's be smart enough and then just move on from it. And again, the only way to do it is not see yourself as a victim in the story. You have to, first accept it. This is how it is. There is an inequality. But how are you going to deal with it? Instead of sitting back and saying that, oh, things are so tough for me versus this, how are you going to deal with it? How I dealt with it, I did initially, when I was also very disappointed initially. I knew that I would not, if I had an opinion, it would not be taken seriously, because I don't fit in the bracket of how a writer should be, or how be it the age, be it the way one presents themselves, or whatever people in their mind have these boxes that a writer should fit in. So your opinions are not taken seriously. And I'm fine with it. But and today they're the same people who wants to have, they want to work with me, and they want to they're waiting for one opinion per se on a certain subject. So, I mean, it's a circle, and you have to ignore all this, and you have to kind of believe in yourself and go forward. And that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you. But since you've also been writing novels, can I ask you about what's the difference between, I mean, you've written 3 books and maybe you're writing more, but what is the kind of difference between doing that and writing a screenplay, which I guess is much more, I mean, it keeps moving, I guess, from day to day. I don't know. I know a little bit about TV, but I don't know so much about film.
No, so novel is like a very, you need to kind of, it's creative freedom at its best for a writer, because there is no interpretation. There's no director sitting on your head wanting to interpret in a different way. You don't have your HODs who are trying to like make sense out of it and then doing their own thing. So it's definitely a better creative outlet in that sense. And because you are directly talking to your reader, because there is you don't need to kind of keep brevity as a certain, you don't need to keep checking that I only have 2 hours, the scenes can't be that long. The medium doesn't have those rules that kind of restrict you in your thought and in your prose when you're writing. So novel is a very beautiful creative process that one, has while they're writing it, etc. But when I'm like writing a screenplay, of course, I have to be very careful of all the technical things that I need to kind of take care of. Scene construction, there's a midpoint in the film, I need to finish everything. Everything has to be shown, and you can't go into a thought process of a character. So the mediums are completely different, so I have to switch accordingly. What do I like more? Creative freedom in a book is much more, because sometimes I tend not to be a team player, and I don't want to kind of make you understand or modify what I've written. But I lately have started enjoying films more, because the reach is a lot more. So I am as hungry for an audience as any other creative person. And when I see that when I write my stories as films, I get a bigger audience, and I get to tell my thoughts and ideas to a larger audience where there is more debate and discussion. So I gravitate towards that more. So I think it is more than a creative decision. It's more of a fulfilling decision as an artist, that I seek more audience, hence I write more films than books. I don't know if that was a part of your question or not, but I just kind of veered off when I decided to just tell you why I prefer films.
And then I think you've also been a creative producer on Man Marziyan.
Yes, so Man Marziyan, I was a creative producer, and now
how is that different then? By how does that add on to being a just like writing the screenplay for a novel, for a film? How does this add to that?
It changes everything. I suddenly have ownership of what I create. Like I, from just being a writer who hands over the work to a director to interpret, I am there every step of the way, and I work with the director, take responsibility and ownership of the final product that will come out. So I take more responsibility, I take more share. There's a bigger stake in the pie. So of course it makes everything very different. And I always feel that actually all writers should try, if they have that bent of mind, if they would like to take that kind of a responsibility, they should go ahead and also produce their material, because then they can actually make sure that what they've written and what gets produced is somewhat in the same color, or it doesn't get distorted too much, because there's so many people who will interpret the work, because there's a director who needs to have his own take. Obviously you can't curtail a director, but when you are with the director every step of the way, be it on the sets, be it a bouncing board, be it in the post of the, you can add so much, and you can work together towards a unified vision. So you definitely give a lot more when you are there throughout the process. And also you take ownership. If it works, you have equal ownership. If it doesn't work, you have to take equal ownership. So that again increases the stakes, and I quite enjoy that. So in fact, in my next, my upcoming film, Haseen Dilruba, I'm the co-producer on that now. And I have absolutely loved the process of, writing it and then setting it up and then producing it with Color Yellow. Anindra is the producer, Color Yellow is producing it, and Vinil Matthews, the director. And I definitely I want to kind of continue with, this whole idea of writing and producing stuff.
Yeah, so it's not just write and then you're done with it. You want to like take it further
I see
and
the
end product
I see the entire project till the end, till the day it releases, from everything to the communication that should go. So once you're producing, you are taking more responsibility of not only what is written, but what is being made, how it is being made, and how it is going to be projected in the market, and how it's going to be received.
Right.
So that much more you're getting into it.
Gurpreet, do you have anything, or should we ask Naveen if he has a question or two? I think he's got a couple of things.
I do have lots of questions, but I think we should open the house now.
So let's first get in Naveen, because as I said that he's got 1 or 2 questions already, and being from FTII, like I mentioned to you, Kanika, earlier, and he's got some screenplay related things, which won't be terribly technical, though he assures us. But Gurleen, can we have him there first, please, Naveen?
Yeah, I've asked him to unmute himself.
Can you see him?
I can't see him, but I can.
Gurleen?
He needs to unmute himself.
Till the time he comes on, my mother has a question for you.
He's
a lot of adapting any other old work, classic. Like to.
I can't hear anything. Sorry.
You can hear my question?
Now I can hear you now.
I was saying that jab tak Naveen nahi aati line pe, my mother has a question for you. She's asking, do you have an adaptation in mind of some classic novel, some modern novel? I don't know.
Please tell her. People are telling me to adapt my own books, and I'm saying no, because because I feel that usually in adaptations, you tend to kind of, books are way, if books have been told in a certain way. I mean, when you've read a book, now you've seen it with your own imagination, and then when you will kind of see it on on the big screen, it'll never match up, because your imagination is always going to be better than the director's imagination. So I always am very nervous about book adaptations, because I feel it's a very tall task. When a story has been told and it's been told well, and it's a classic, and it's I've emotionally engaged with it, and then I want to recreate that entire thing, is a tough one. So I tend to play safe and not get into adaptations.
Okay.
So Naveen, are you there now?
I'm here.
We can't see you, but
we can. Now we can.
Why?
Yeah, now we can.
Hi. Hi, Preeti.
Hi. Ask your question now, Naveen.
Sure. Hi, Kanika, how are you?
I'm good. Hi, Naveen, how are you?
I'm fine. Well, Kanika, you were talking about your, deal with the parents, for your wayward dreams. But what lovely wayward dreams you've had. And
Thank you.
I envy your parents,
Thank you.
This is a cliche of a question, because you must have been asked this many a times. St. Stephen's, London School of Economics, and then you suddenly wear off, instead of becoming a super duper fund manager, hedge fund manager, or a vice president somewhere in a bank, corking champagne in the day, in the afternoon. You come back to this bad world of Bollywood, and that too at a young age. Successful young girl of a, quite, I imagine, well-to-do family, educated family, coming back to Bollywood, which is a very uncertain world. And that too, script writing. It's nerve-wracking to be a script writer, because your dreams, they don't let you either die, and
or live.
they don't let you live while, So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that, those uncertain days when you were mulling after this, क्या करूं, क्या ना करूं, सपने भी हैं, सपने देखने भी हैं, और माँ बाप के बारे में भी सोचना है. That sort of thing. Tell us about those days.
No, firstly, I have to confess that, like you rightly said, there was the first 2 years, I was thinking of those champagnes a lot. And, what have I left and why am I? There was always this, I was looking back. And because literally after, immediately when I came in and I started interning, I had these grand dreams of, talking films, learning about filmmaking, meeting all these amazing people who were, the masters at what they do. And literally none of that happened in the first year. I was only running like a headless chicken, getting printouts. And it was, and I realized that, there is, so there were certain things that I kind of realized very quickly, thankfully. Then maybe I would give the credit to the education that I've had, where you kind of train your mind to think in a certain way. So the following things I realized: one is that it's a very unorganized industry. I know you hear about it from the outside, but when you're in it, you realize that there is no structure. There is nobody's going to give me a point A to start from, and then from point A I'll go to point B. There's no certainty. Point C, the only way I can reach where I want to reach is I have to figure out what is the structure from here onwards. So I literally sat down and I decided that, okay, there are 2-3 ways to go about it. One is that I need to learn the medium first. If I want to be a writer, that was my process. It could be different for other people. I wanted to instinctively, I want to know what is the medium that I want to write for. For that, I wanted to understand the medium first. So I worked backwards and I decided I'm going to be on a film set, and I'm going to first understand that when you see a scene written out on a paper, what goes on in translating it into what we see finally. So I needed to see that entire process firstly, understand it, and only then I thought I would be confident enough to go back and sit on the paper, knowing my medium. So I invested time in that. I started working as an AD. I worked with a lot of directors, Farah Khan, Aziz Mirza, everyone, and I kind of took a crash course in everything that I could about a film, a set and filmmaking, etc. And then once I kind of understood what it was, and I started kind of applying my own understanding of what the medium is to the kind of stories I wanted to tell. So there was a lot of self-education and tutorial that was happening as I went along. Not to mention that there were half the time I was also regretting that, oh my God, have I taken the right decision? Oh my God, am I only going to do this? As an AD, what do? When you're starting as a fifth AD, literally, when you don't have any experience, and they're saying, oh, go to the actors van and call them for the shot. Now, while I'm running and doing that, and I'm thinking, LSC, St. Stephen's, what the hell? So yes, there were times, and and I'll tell you, like, I think 50% of us kind of quit then while you're running in, telling the actor, come on, give your shot, and you're just standing there. 50% of us quit there. Then the next 25%, I think we quit when we have understood how the system works, and we feel that we are ready, but the world doesn't think you're ready. That is when the next 25, so 75% will go off there, because I had my script, I decided I'm ready to write, but other people didn't feel like that at all. I was like, why would anyone even give me 2 minutes to let me narrate a story and then tell me that, okay, I will put money in it. Of course, it was a far-fetched thing. So what did I do? I thought that I need to get credibility. I don't have, I've not come from, say, I don't have a degree in writing. I don't have a film school background. I don't have any credibility to sit in front of a producer or a director or an actor and say that I can write. So what did I do? I decided to write a book. Because writing a book will give me credibility like nothing else can. So while I was running around being the fifth AD, the fourth AD, the third AD, climbing the ladder, I wrote a book about all of this. Because I thought the biggest stories were actually unfolding on the film set. That I was right there in. I'm telling you, the film set is hilarious.
This is Bombay Duck is a Fish.
This is my first book, Bombay Duck is a Fish.
Yeah.
And that's when, so
Lovely
when my
title.
first, thanks.
Lovely.
Yeah, and that's when the book came out. So it was, there was a sort of a I wouldn't say that I mindlessly did everything. No, I applied my brain to whatever I could, because there was so much chaos. and I put in a lot of hard work, and there were a lot of misgivings, there were a lot of questions and uncertainties, and there were days when I was really feeling that this is all not worth it, and it's all going to end up in nothing. I'm going to be a failure. But like you said, that my only thing is I didn't give up. So the last 10% who kind of don't give up after all of this is, I guess, then they finally get a chance, hopefully. And I think I kind of managed to reach that not giving up. Ultimately, it just comes down to, I think, holding on. After everything that you've tried.
Yeah, such a candid confession and such a beautiful heart talk. May I say that after going to FTI at 34 and doing my screenplay writing and working there, I kind of never had the courage to go back because I had a job at All India Radio. But like the way you said, 10% who don't give up manage to reach somewhere and do something, and that is a testimony of your bravery and courage. Also, staying power. Now, the second question that I wanted to ask you was that, during the 30s and the 40s in Bollywood, there were a lot of female heroines, or let's say protagonists, who were larger than male. They were Fearless, Nadia, the stunt queen. You had Ermeline. Hello, can she hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. So, Kanika, there was Ermeline, there was Ruby Maya, Salochana. These women had scripts written by men, and they had a staying power on the screen as much as, you say, a person like Prithvi Raj Kapoor, or say a person like, the Jairaj, the top heroes of those days. And the 60s and the 70s became romantic, and the Angry Men Young years, and the apple cart somehow got disturbed. You had an occasional Parveen Bobby, doing a brave role in Diwar, courtesy Mr. Salim Javed. But somehow the female protagonist took a backseat. Now, all of a sudden, the female protagonist is coming back. Do you think that is due to the brigade of screenwriters, lady screenwriters like you coming up, or is it because the economic power, the shift in the economic power of the genders, the audiences want to see female protagonists on screen?
Well, I really hope
I asked this because you're an economist.
No, I will answer that. It's a very interesting question, and I want to tell you this, that I hope and I pray that it is because of there is this economic power that is shifting. Because if that's happening in a country, I am so happy. So ideal situation, it should be because suddenly India has realized that how important women are as a workforce. We've realized that we cannot really get ahead by ignoring 50% of our population that is perhaps more productive, and that needs to be coming in the forefront. Perhaps India has realized that there's a certain section, perhaps, that yes, she has a voice, and she has a brain, and she needs to have a career. I hope all of that has happened, and I hope hence we are seeing it in cinema as well. And that is the utopian thought. And I don't want to even jinx it or contradict it or take the credit and say, no, it's because of screenwriters like us. No, I would never want to do that. But having said that, perhaps what I can admit to is that we came at the right time to maybe capture this shift that we hope is happening in certain sections of the country, where women are coming as a solid workforce, and although we don't see it in our parliament, or even the ministers, we hardly have like 2-3 female ministers there. But anyway, keeping that aside, I feel that yes, we did come in at a point where a certain section of the society was willing to see this aspect of women, which is more outgoing and which is kind of independent, and we kind of captured that and we brought it out in the fore. But I would obviously not want to take the credit for it.
We might have some more questions from others now, Naveen. Then we'll come back if there is.
Sure.
Is there anything else from Any other person who's asking anything?
I don't think we asked them to raise their hands, so we can.
Gurupdesh, Gurupdesh. हाँ जी, आप पूछे.
Am I audible now?
Yes. Yes, but we can't
Yeah.
see you.
All right, you can do without my visuals. I thought that there would be a little more talk about her writings because she has done 3 novels. I think we didn't have much to talk about that. And I would particularly like to ask her about this Durga novel, Dance of Durga. If you have read that, I think the audience might have. There are lots of shades of these Radhe Ma thing in that novel. The same kind of background, rural background where she comes from. And then later on, there are shades of another Sadhvi, again from Amritsar, who married her own devotee. I would just like to know from you whether you had these Sadhvis or these, these Swamis in your mind when you were writing this book, Dance of Durga?
Okay, I'd like to answer that in 2 parts. Firstly, I want to address the first comment that you made, that there's very little talk about the writing. Actually, you have me to blame for it, because usually when I have this interactive session, in my experience, I've realized that the audience is least interested in the technical aspect of it and they get bored. Maybe it is the kind of interaction that I've had. So I'm very glad that you pointed out that, let's talk a little bit more about the writing. So I'm quite happy about it. Now coming to Durga, yes, it is definitely based on the entire God-men, God-women culture that we have in our country. And I did my research, and I did Google all our God-men and God-women, and I've not shied away from committing to as you have identified them as, say, a Radhe Ma or say these Swamis or whatever. I have not shied away from kind of hiding behind like whitewashing their characters. We have God-men and God-women who are politicizing this entire this faith and this whole culture of this. It's a scam basically, and that's how I see it. And that's how I've portrayed it. And yes, there are shades of Radhe Ma in it, because she is one of the famous God women that we have, and I completely question it, and I completely suspect it, and it is there in the novel. Yes.
Any other questions from the audience?
I don't see any raised hands.
Yeah, I have one anyway.
Huh.
I have many actually, but we probably need another session, Kanika. Anyway, I was actually going to ask you for your Shah Rukh moment when you were there. Tell us a bit about that.
I've spoken about it actually recently only. I think I was doing a conversation with Quint. Basically, when I was so nervous because Shah Rukh is a superstar, and ultimately I'm also like I've admired his work, etc., etc. And obviously there's this whole pressure of making a good impression, So I kept telling myself, you are an educated woman. You've just come from LSE. Obviously, it means that you're not dumb, right? So I'm like doing the self-talk. And I'm like, there's no need to get tongue-tied like everybody else does. There's no need for you to behave like everyone else does, because you're confident and you're educated. And all this self-talk is happening before I know that I'm going to meet Shah Rukh in like 10 minutes. And trust you me, like the moment he came in, I was as starstruck as anyone else. And I was like, oh my God, because he's so charming. There's definitely something called a star aura, and Shah Rukh has it, like the biggest of them all. So that was my Shah Rukh. It was very typical. It was, and I promised myself I don't want it to be typical, but it was typical. And in fact, even in my first novel, Bombay Duck is a Fish, there is an entry of Shah Rukh as Shah Rukh Khan, and a lot of it was literally what we all felt. And let me tell you, like any other woman, I behave like any other 100% of women behave like that when they see Shah Rukh. And I sadly was one of the statistics. That day I realized I'm not nobody special, and it is just we're all a victim of his charm. So that is my Shah Rukh moment. And then of course I got over it soon enough, because I had to kind of get the brain ticking, and I had to start working. And obviously I could not make him feel that I'm like starstruck, so I would be of no use, because I had to kind of obviously work with him. So I went on to work with him for 5 years. So obviously the brain started functioning after a while, after that brain freeze moment. But yeah, that was those, I think those 20-30 minutes of complete awe, like I was quite embarrassed.
That sounds quite wonderful, actually. Anybody wants to come up with a question, or do we call it an evening? Naveen, do you have something more, or Gurpratap?
Well, I would like
I just wanted to ask. Go ahead. Yeah, I think Gurpratap was asking something.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask her that she said that an adaptation is a difficult process compared to writing a screenplay. Is it difficult to adapt your own novel itself, Kanika?
It's painful.
Would you call that also difficult?
It's painful.
Why?
Forget
To
difficult.
leave out
because
to leave
no.
To leave out something you have written so lovingly.
No, not at all.
While
not
you're
out of
writing
that.
the
It's
screenplay.
painful because it's painful because it's boring. I have already said this story once, and if you want me to tell this again, I'll be bored. I get like I can't bring myself to deconstruct the story again. Maybe you can call me lazy. You can call me that I don't have like the kind of patience and focus to revisit a story. I can't do that. So just
No, because I asked you this because of the fact that as you would be knowing in the trade, there are writers who are excellent at adaptation.
Absolutely.
And they are not very good at writing screenplays. Excellent original screenplays, and are lousy at adaptations.
Yeah, because it's a different skill set altogether. I completely agree with you. No, I completely agree with you. Writing a adapted screenplay is a different skill set than an original screenplay. Your voice is overlapping, I think. Sorry. Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So fine. No, so I completely agree with you. Writing a screenplay, adapting a screenplay is completely different from writing an original screenplay, because you need to know what you need to keep in and keep out, and sometimes what tracks you need to add or to close. So it's a very different kind of a ball game altogether. I particularly, but that's not the reason why I don't take it up. I just feel that I would not enjoy it. That's the only reason that I don't take it up. I mean, if I really feel compelled to kind of like I've read something and I feel compelled that I want to tell this story on screen, maybe then I will get into it and firstly learn a certain basic rules of what I need to be aware of when I'm adapting the screenplay, because there has to be due respect given to the novel, to the work, and to the process firstly, and only then one can go about adapting a screenplay from a well-established or a classic novel.
When you pitch a story, you do it single shot or like you stagger it? When you're pitching a story, say you're pitching your story, is it single shot or you stagger it? Is it single shot, like say 10-15 minutes time, half an hour time, or do you say that let's carry it over lunch, or say like?
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I think our voices are overlapping. Yeah, so basically, okay. So basically, I like to usually, I don't come and pitch ideas. I usually write entire screenplays with dialogue. And I like to then go and get a producer and a director after I've written the entire script out on spec. And then hence I need, 2 to 3 uninterrupted hours of listening because I need to narrate. So that is something that I kind of feel more comfortable in. And nowadays, I think even the producers and the directors and the actors, they also prefer it that way, because if you are getting to hear a full script with dialogue, that it's that much easier to know either you love it or you don't. So there is no midway, there's no going around in circles. Otherwise what happens is, you've heard an idea and you say, "Arey, achha, let's see where it goes." And then you start going in these circles of, "Oh, okay, let's go to the next stage. Let's see the screenplay and then see where the dialogue goes." I don't get into all of that, because I like to finish my piece and then I like to go there and say, "This is what I have. Either you like it or you don't like it. Either you'll invest in it or you will not invest your money in it." So it's not wasting their time, it's not wasting my time. But yes, you have to give me a dedicated 2-3 hours. I do not like to scatter it. I don't want to take breaks and just people going out for a walk. I'm very sensitive about that. And nowadays I think people are also very professional. It's not like the olden days that we've heard stories where people are just, making writers sit around, and everybody is very professional. Everybody is very aware of the time and effort that somebody's put in. So it's a good place. It's a good way. One is kind of, at least my experiences have been very good. So I can share that much.
The literary agent has arrived in India and is thriving. Has the agent for screenplay writers arrived in Bollywood?
A lot of writers now have representation with agents, but I choose to represent myself. I choose not to align myself with any agents, because I feel that I crack the best deals for myself. So I don't feel that I want somebody else to go out there and negotiate for me. But I would say that yes, they're a big help for writers who want somebody else to represent them, because as you know, and you're aware that, writers usually tend to get a raw deal, be it in terms of remuneration, be it in terms of credit, be in terms of, we're still kind of struggling. We were, struggling for a certain kind of a respectability in terms of a pay packet or a parity in terms of credit. So in that, I think it's a good thing that there's more representation by agencies for writers. But if you ask me personally, I negotiate my contracts and my my deals directly with my producers.
And is there a glass ceiling to be broken by lady screenwriters in terms of pay packet in Bollywood?
I don't think so. I think I'm very happy with the pay I get. So I feel that there is, I genuinely feel that, like I told you, after that 10%, I feel that Bollywood has this quality of, being an equalizer in that sense, that I don't have any complaints right now that I'm not getting paid what I'm asking for. So let's put it that way.
Being a lady screenwriter,
let's just go for one last question.
Yeah,
good
sure.
with that? There are a couple of raised hands, so should we just go for one last question and then end, because I think we are way over time also. And I'm sure Kanika has much to do. We are taking up all her time. There are two hands that I can see, Inakshi and Gurupresh. Good, Pratap.
Yeah, I've been unmuted, Preeti.
Yeah, Inakshi.
Okay, so you're very disarming, Kanika. It was just, it's so joyful to listen to a young person.
Thank you.
I wanted to know, do you write in Devanagari or do you write in English?
I write in, I write my description. So a screenplay has a description, action, and then dialogue. So I usually write the description and action in English and the dialogue in Devanagari.
Okay, because I've seen a lot of the scripts are in Latin scripts. So I was always, I always wondered how, and I find it extremely difficult to say the same thing when I read it in Roman. And the second thing that I wanted to know was, when you write a screen, a particular shot, like, a particular scene, do you even do a breakdown of it visually?
See, my directors won't be happy if I kind of very blatantly do it, obviously. But, we have our ways where we kind of nudge them in the descriptions that we write. as to how close we want to go and how much emotion we want to see. If we are saying that, her tormented eyes, she's weeping, he has no choice. He can't show weeping and tormented eyes from a long shot. He'll have to go closer. So I guess as writers, we have a ways to kind of see how the scene will flow.
And so when you went for your first reading, how did you manage to get someone to even listen to you?
Sorry, when I went, sorry, can you repeat?
So the first time that you wrote your script and you wrote this wonderful story, and I watched Man Mar Gaya and I've loved it. I love the sassiness of it. So when you went to read it out, how did you even get an appointment?
Man Mar Gaya, I'll tell you, like I told you, like I was answering that question of, how the journey was. So Man Mar Gaya came at a point where I thought I was ready to write and tell my stories, but not necessarily people thought, I had a voice that they wanted to listen to. So Man Mar Gaya, exactly when I finished that first draft, I completely believed in it. And now I had to go out there and find a director who would believe in it equally, and then find a producer who would put money in it, and then find actors who would want to play it. So I knew that it was a long, long journey, and it was. Man Mar Gaya took a long time to kind of get made. So I didn't have any credibility in terms of, knocking on doors, or people are going to pick up my phone and say that, okay, come. Nobody's going to give me a meeting to narrate a script, frankly speaking, at that point of time, despite the fact that I'd written a novel. But I needed some help to kind of get a meeting. But I knew once I get a meeting, then I tell them that, okay, I'm also a novelist and I have written this, I would have some ground to kind of, work from. But I definitely needed a way to get that meeting with the right people. So for that, I first started looking out for directors, because I understood while I was, struggling, that the directors, more than the producers or more than the actors, are hungry enough to kind of go to voices that have not been captured yet or have not been established yet. Because, directors have this thing that, okay, I want to tell a different story, and perhaps it's going to come from a voice that has not been heard before. So these directors who are wanting to tell a story are more open to meeting writers who don't have a legit name yet in the industry. And that's how it works. Everybody is kind of figuring it out. It's chaotic for directors even who are trying to make a mark. So in this process, I found a director who kind of happened to like the story, and he happened to know a guy who happened to know a guy who could get us a meeting. So, it is that long a shot, but you have to take it. And you have to hope in hell that, once you get through the right door, and then you get that 20 minutes or you get that half an hour, because now I insist for a 2.5 hour narration or a 3 hour time slot. That time I couldn't insist on anything. Perhaps that the fact that you're giving me 10 minutes is good enough. So so it was the same with Man Mar Gaya. But thankfully I walked to the right doors, where from the first time I narrated the story idea, I had an audience, I had the person interested, and I had the person believing in it. And then I just went on with it, and so on and so forth. And then the journey of Man Mar Gaya started.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kanika. You are quite sizzling.
Thank you.
I'm not putting on my video, and my hair is all over the place, and you're looking very pretty.
Thank you.
So,
Kanika,
really I believe
thank
you
you
all
for
have lots
coming
and lots
today.
of questions.
हाँ गुरप्रताप, sorry.
मैं ये कह रहा था कि we all have lots of questions even now after मैंने खुद भी काफी क्वेश्चन है जो अभी पूछने थे पर पूछे नहीं, and I believe that the same goes for everyone who has joined us. But then Kanika, due to a shortage of time, I think we have to end this session now. And on behalf of Maja House and all our audience in Amritsar, आपने शायद नीचे reactions पढ़े होंगे. People are so happy that a girl from Amritsar is doing so well and has established herself so firmly in the film industry. And on behalf of Maja House, I would like to do this. Thank you from the core of our hearts for joining us today, and for such a disarming, straight from the heart, straight from the hip conversation.
Thank you.
It
was
is
a
not
pleasure.
always that person from Bollywood comes in and talks about everything, just like that.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And wish you lots of luck and lots of fantastic work ahead. And we are looking forward to many more films from you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you again for joining
And
us.
just before we wind up, ek do or announcements hain. Kanika, can you just bear up with us for just 2 minutes?
Sure.
We have a conversation coming up on the 23rd of June between Vish Thamija, a crime writer. And then on the 26th, we have Sanjoy Hazarka joining us with Sir Mark Tully and Kalpana. And they will be talking about the state of emergency because it is the anniversary of the emergency. And on the 27th of June, we have a lively quiz on R.D. Burman, who, like Preeti just announced, that I'm a huge fan. So anyone who would like to join us for those, please do contact us. And thank you, Kanika. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
It was lovely having you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.